Imagine signing off on a new enterprise software package in Seoul,
Right.
and somehow that single decision is directly tied to, like, the price of a gallon of gas in Texas, or a local election in New York.
Or even a drone strike in Crimea.
Exactly. I mean, we prefer to think of the world in these neat, separate little categories. Foreign policy is over here, tech markets are over there, and personal health care is just somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, but today, those walls have completely collapsed.
They really have. Welcome to the Deep Dive. It is Tuesday, June 23, 2026, and I'm so glad you could join us. Our entire stack of sources today comes from the June 23 edition of the Daily Tech Reader.
And our mission for you today is really to connect the dots across what is basically a massive global stress test.
Right, because when the buffer zones between diplomacy, digital infrastructure, and just daily survival disappear, a shift in one system immediately fractures the others.
Yeah, you stop looking at isolated events and you start seeing the whole system buckle.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to map out how major diplomatic shifts are forcing domestic political realignments.
And how those realignments are triggering massive tech market corrections.
Ultimately showing how everyday people are carrying the weight of all this rebalancing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting at the absolute macro level, global choke points.
Yeah, and the most critical choke point on the board right now is absolutely the Strait of Hormuz.
Right, the classic bottleneck.
Exactly. For decades, this narrow waterway has dictated the baseline cost of global logistics and energy.
Yeah.
But as of this morning, the bottleneck there is finally easing up.
Which is huge.
It is. We are seeing commercial vessels actively resuming their transits right now.
And that's a massive relief valve for the global economy. But the mechanism driving this isn't, market forces. It's purely diplomatic.
Purely diplomatic, yeah. The U.S. has temporarily lifted oil sanctions on Iran.
And we are already seeing the real-world impact of that. I mean, Brent crude prices are trading lower today.
Because when shipping insurance rates drop since the geopolitical temperature is cooling down, that discount eventually makes its way to your local gas pump.
Right. But, the physical oil is flowing, but the diplomatic machinery keeping those ships moving, that requires constant, heavy maintenance.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why Secretary of State Marco Rubio is currently on a Gulf security tour. He's touching down in the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain.
Trying to keep everyone on the same page.
Exactly. The strategic goal is to build a unified partner alignment around this new U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding. You don't just, sign a framework and walk away. You have to physically secure the perimeter with your allies.
Right. And while the U.S. secures the perimeter in the Middle East, there is this fascinating masterclass in soft power happening in Europe right now.
Oh, at Versailles.
Yes. The Palace of Versailles in France just debuted this massive diplomatic gallery, and it's explicitly celebrating the 250th anniversary of American independence.
Which is no coincidence. Timing in diplomacy is literally everything.
Right, because President Macron recently hosted the summit for the U.S.-Iran framework right there in France.
Yeah, so opening this gallery right now is a highly deliberate projection of Western unity. They're basically using centuries of shared security, legacy, and architecture and art to culturally launder the immense stress of the current geopolitical moment.
That's a great way to put it. But there is a massive friction point threatening to derail all of this progress.
Always is.
Yeah. Despite the commercial ships moving and the diplomatic galleries opening, Tehran is publicly contradicting Western statements regarding international nuclear monitoring permissions.
Right. They are openly disputing what level of access international inspectors actually have.
Which is wild. Is this diplomatic situation basically like signing a long-term lease on a house when you haven't even agreed on who is paying the utility?
That's exactly what it is. And this raises an important question. How do global markets price in a basement full of uninspected pipes?
They don't like it.
Not at all. The market risk premium remains highly sensitive precisely because of this unresolved dispute. I mean, if the inspections fall apart, the sanctions snap back.
The strait closes.
Yep, and crude prices skyrocket again. Everything right now hinges on a very fragile agreement over access.
And that kind of high-wire foreign policy has real mass. It doesn't just float in the geopolitical ether, it crashes directly into domestic politics. Which brings us to the political ripple effect.
The spillover.
Exactly. And before we dive into the mechanics here, I want to be crystal clear with you, the listener. We are strictly analyzing the political strategies as they're recorded in the sources today. We are absolutely not endorsing any political side, left or right. We're just decoding the mechanics of power.
And those mechanics show that foreign policy tension doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's forcing leaders in both the U.S. and the U.K. into highly defensive postures right now.
Right. Like in the U.S., the House just passed a bipartisan war powers resolution.
Yeah, demanding the withdrawal of U.S. forces from hostilities with Iran.
No, it's non-binding, right?
Right, it doesn't have the force of law to pull troops out tomorrow, but politically. It signals deep, deep impatience across both parties regarding the legal boundaries of this engagement.
And you can see that impatience trickling down to the most local levels. Like today in New York, there's a Democratic primary that is acting as a massive proxy battle.
Oh, yeah. The anti-war factions going head-to-head with the establishment center candidates.
Exactly. This isn't just a local race anymore. It's being treated as a referendum on the entire party's foreign policy heading into the 2026 midterms.
And on the Republican side, the strategy relies on a different kind of defensive consolidation. We're looking at a new analysis of over 1,000 Trump endorsements, and there is a stark shift in his methodology.
How so?
Well, he's backing candidates much earlier in the cycle, but he's strictly focusing on established Republican strongholds. He is actively avoiding high-risk, volatile primary battles entirely.
So playing it safe to secure a reliable legislative majority.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, over in the UK, the defensive lines just broke completely. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has officially resigned.
Yeah, following persistent approval struggles and just intense internal pressure from his own Labour Party.
And now, former Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is rapidly consolidating support to take over. If he succeeds, he will be the UK's 7th Prime Minister in a single decade. Which is crazy. But wait, I have to push back a little here. It seems like everyone is playing defense. Trump is playing it safe with safe seats. Starmer couldn't hold off internal pressure, and Congress is trying to pull the reins on foreign engagements. Isn't this just like standard political maneuvering?
I mean, it looks like standard politics until you measure the sheer speed and the level of risk aversion at play. Leaders globally are abandoning ideological gambles entirely right now.
Just playing it safe.
Yeah, because when you have an environment this volatile where the Strait of Hormuz could literally close tomorrow, a reliable, predictable majority is the only currency that matters. They are playing for sheer survival.
Wow. And, if you want to understand how that craving for safety impacts you directly, just look at your 401k or the hiring trends in your industry. Because institutional investors, they're doing the exact same thing with their capital.
Yeah, we are witnessing a massive market rebalancing. Monday's close confirmed the trend. The NASDAQ composite fell 1.3%, and the S&P 500 slipped 0.4%.
So capital is actively fleeing high multiple tech valuations.
Right. The company's priced based on massive future growth potential. And investors are seeking shelter in blue-chip industrials. They want the companies that generate reliable, current cash flow.
So the era of cheap money funding growth at all costs is officially pivoting to safety at all costs.
Absolutely. And the poster child for this whole tech pullback is SpaceX. Their shares just plummeted 16.4%.
16.4%, that's huge.
Yeah, it was right after they announced a massive $20 billion corporate debt offering to finance new infrastructure. That drop wiped out roughly $600 billion in paper valuation.
But hold on, if SpaceX equities are still trading way above their initial offering price, why does a 16% drop actually matter to the broader market?
Well, it matters because of what that $20 billion debt represents. We are fundamentally shifting from software economics to hardware economics.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about it like this. You can scale a software app to millions of users with relatively low overhead. But building physical satellite arrays and rockets, that requires staggering capital expenditure. The market is brutally recalibrating the cost of building tech in the physical world.
Which perfectly explains why Wall Street is waiting on pins and needles for Tuesday's earnings from FedEx and Wednesday's earnings from Micron Technology.
Exactly.
I mean, at first glance, shipping boxes and making microchips seem totally unrelated. But FedEx gives you the pulse on commercial freight like, are physical goods actually moving in a strained economy?
Right.
And Micron gives you the pulse on AI hardware demand. They're like the twin operational indicators we need before Thursday's updated U.S. GDP data.
The market is demanding proof of execution right now. And the frontier AI landscape this week is a perfect case study in how difficult execution has actually become.
Yeah, look at Anthropic. They just transitioned their Claude Fable 5 model to its paid tier.
And it did not go smoothly.
No. They offered a 13-day complimentary launch window, but because recent federal export directives forced the models offline temporarily, users only got about 4 to 5 days of actual product availability.
It's a regulatory stumble that alienated a massive user base. Meanwhile, Google is entering the final week of its June launch deadline for Gemini 3.5 Pro. It's currently in its Vertex AI Enterprise preview.
And the headline technical achievement there is its 2 million token context window.
Which is mind-blowing.
It really is. To put that in perspective for you, a token is essentially a piece of a word. A 2 million token window means the AI can hold the equivalent of roughly 1,500 books in its working memory at once. It can cross-reference all that data without losing the thread of your original prompt.
It is an incredible piece of engineering.
Yeah.
But intelligence alone doesn't win the market anymore. Deployment does, and Samsung Electronics just proved that.
Right. They successfully deployed ChatGPT and OpenAI's Codex across their entire global workforce. Every single employee now has enterprise access. Here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the stark contrast here. You have Anthropic tripping over federal export directives, struggling to just keep a free trial online.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, Samsung executes this flawless, massive global rollout of OpenAI across a complex corporate infrastructure. Are we finally moving out of the AI hype phase and hitting the messy reality of operational deployment and regulation?
We absolutely are. The hype phase is officially over.
Yeah.
AI is now a fundamental workflow tool, and it demands gigawatts of power, massive hardware expenditures, and literally armies of compliance lawyers.
The friction isn't isolated to digital code or stock tickers anymore. It has real-world mass.
Exactly. When shipping lanes choke and AI servers demand entire power grids, the physical systems we rely on every day begin to crack under the weight.
And this brings us to the acute systemic pressures that are currently forcing drastic actions for everyday people and entire nations. The healthcare data coming out today is a perfect micro-level example of this.
Oh, the GLP-1 medications.
Yeah, we are seeing a steep rise in commercial insurance exclusions for high-demand GLP-1 weight loss medications.
Right. These are metabolic hormones that have just seen explosive blockbuster demand over the last few years. But because the national healthcare infrastructure simply cannot absorb the sheer cost of that demand, access is now being dictated almost entirely by individual employer plan designs.
Meaning, if your company's HR department decided the premiums were too high, you are cut off.
Yeah, patients are being forced to navigate incredibly complex corporate appeals, or they have to rely on manufacturer discount programs just to get their medication.
The system passed its breaking point, so it just shifted the burden onto the individual.
And we're seeing that exact same dynamic systems breaking and forcing extreme workarounds at the macro level, too. Look at Cuba. They're facing an acute domestic energy shortage, and it's being compounded by strict U.S. sanctions. The economic pressure is so existential right now that Cuba's National Assembly just approved broad reforms to open major sectors to private enterprise.
Ideologically, that is a massive concession for Cuba.
Huge. But they are framing it purely as an emergency adjustment. It's a survival mechanism. They are abandoning dogma just to keep the lights on.
And we're seeing similar forced pragmatism in Europe today. EU diplomats just met with Taliban officials in Brussels.
Which caused quite a stir.
Definitely. They're actively negotiating streamlined administrative procedures to accelerate the deportation of Afghan nationals. Human rights groups are, predictably, heavily criticizing the meetings.
Yet the EU diplomats are defending the negotiations as an operational necessity for continental border management.
When the system is overwhelmed, operational necessity just overrides everything else. And then in Eastern Europe, we have a literal system being broken to choke off supply.
Yeah, a Ukrainian deep strike drone successfully destroyed a major Russian supply rail bridge in Crimea today.
And the reports indicate it is entirely non-operational now, which is severely complicating Russian military replenishment lines.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying causality becomes really obvious. You've got a patient battling their own employer for medication, Cuba reluctantly embracing private enterprise, the EU sitting down with the Taliban, and a critical rail bridge reduced to rubble.
They all seem so disconnected.
Right, but they're all examples of actors backed into corners by failing systems. They're forced into extreme, uncomfortable workarounds just to maintain basic functionality.
It is a heavy global landscape to process, but, even as these massive systemic shifts alter the geopolitical tectonic plates, daily human life marches on. The weather patterns continue, tragedies strike, and global entertainment provides a necessary exhaust valve.
The physical reality of a changing world never pauses. And today we're seeing the devastating consequences of rapidly scaling creative infrastructure without adequate safety measures.
Yeah, this story out of India is awful. In Hyderabad, a severe structural fire at a commercial animation studio killed at least 15 workers today.
It's prompting immediate demands for emergency regulatory inspections of these high-density tech facilities.
It's just a heartbreaking reminder of the human cost behind our digital content. And the physical environment is applying its own extreme pressure today, too. In France, a massive summer storm system triggered code red flash flood warnings across 54 departments.
The sheer volume of water has caused at least 20 weather-related fatalities, severe infrastructure disruption, and they've had to cancel major public events.
And simultaneously, the U.S. power grid is being tested by extreme heat. The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is enduring an intense early summer heat dome.
Yeah, we're looking at sustained 95-degree conditions with 15-mile-per-hour southern winds.
And it's not just an uncomfortable number on a thermometer, right? It's millions of HVAC units pulling maximum amperage simultaneously, stressing the regional energy grids to their absolute limits.
Fortunately, there's a northern cold front advancing from the plains that should bring some structural relief to that grid by midweek.
Good news there. Now, amidst all this heavy news, the 2026 World Cup is providing a massive, shared cultural distraction.
Oh, the group play dynamics are becoming incredibly tight. England and Ghana played to a highly defensive 0-0 draw at Gillette Stadium in Boston. So both teams advanced to the final match day of group play, tied at 4 points each.
Contrast that with Portugal, who just absolutely dismantled Uzbekistan 5-0.
Cristiano Ronaldo secured his first 2 goals of the tournament.
Incredible. And French striker Kylian Mbappe officially hit his 100th international cap in a weather-delayed victory over Iraq. The upcoming brackets are high stakes, too. We've got Croatia versus Panama, Colombia against the DR Congo, Mexico facing Czechia, and a heavy-hitting clash between Brazil and Scotland.
Should be great matches. And while millions tune into the World Cup, the corporate world just celebrated a major milestone at the Cannes Lions International Festival.
Right. Lato's Chief Product and Marketing Officer, Julia Golden, won the prestigious European CMO title.
And the reason she won is fascinating. It was specifically for her work integrating modern digital narratives and commercial AI into multi-generational brand growth.
So what does this all mean? When you look at this entire board, from the shipping lanes of Hormuz and the heat domes in Texas to a Lego executive taking home a marketing award for AI.
It loops us right back to our earlier discussion about Samsung and Gemini. AI is no longer just a technical marvel discussed in server rooms. It's the fundamental strategic backdrop of global culture now. It's how you grow a beloved legacy toy brand.
Right. So to synthesize all of this for you, today's deep dive reveals a world in a rapid, unforgiving state of forced rebalancing. Capital is fleeing the high-risk tech valuations for the safety of blue-chip industrials. Politicians are avoiding ideological gambles to lock down reliable majorities.
And entire nations, whether it's the EU negotiating borders or Cuba restructuring its economy, they're being forced into incredibly uncomfortable compromises just to keep their systems functioning.
Everything is adapting to extreme pressure.
Everything. And that leaves us with a critical thought to examine before we go. We discussed Google's Gemini 3.5 Pro model earlier, and its 2 million token context window.
Right, the ability of a machine to hold thousands of pages of complex, contradictory information in its memory and seamlessly reason through it.
A level of synthesis humans honestly struggle to achieve.
Yeah, definitely.
Look at the overwhelming, interconnected complexity of the world we just mapped out today. You have the delicate U.S.-Iran diplomatic dance, the EU negotiating with the Taliban, Cuba's shifting economy, the collapsing logistics infrastructure in Crimea, and the intricate global supply chains dictating the price of oil and microchips.
It's a lot to hold in your head at once.
It is. So the provocative question for you to consider is this. As global diplomacy and supply chains become mathematically too complex for traditional human political structures to manage effectively, will these frontier AI models become our ultimate diplomats and logisticians? Or will they simply become another geopolitical choke point that we have to fight over?
Wow, that really is the ultimate question of the next decade. Are these systems the cure for the bottleneck, or are they just the next Strait of Hormuz? We will leave you with that to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and we will catch you next time.